Okay, welcome to Lecture for Research Methods. We'll be talking about portions of chapters 6 and 7 of the APA manual, looking at how to credit sources and then how to construct a reference page for those sources that you cited in your paper. Okay, so first a quick review of when to cite, which we've already talked about this before. So just, when to cite to avoid engaging in plagiarism. Whenever you're using someone else's words or ideas, right? That's the straightforward answer. You need to document where those words or ideas or images even came from. Okay? And then also, if it's your own ideas, if you've previously published those ideas or words somewhere else, you've got to cite yourself to avoid self-plagiarism. Right? And then while we're talking about that, it's also important to remember that you cite correctly and sufficiently, which most often means indicating if you have quoted material or not. Right? So putting kind of the information says, okay, this is somebody else's idea, that's good, but it's not sufficient if you use their exact words. You need to indicate that you used their exact words. Okay? When is it okay not to cite? Sometimes. When it's your opinion, which you need to indicate clearly in your writing that is your opinion, which you can either do by introducing yourself as the subject of the sentence or by using tentative language, like such and such, may be, perhaps, those kinds of words. Make it clear that you're not stating something as a fact. And then if something is common knowledge, then you don't need a citation for it. Okay. So moving on to how to cite. Depends on if you're quoting or paraphrasing. So how do you know if you're quoting or paraphrasing? Well, my general rule is if you see 4 or more words that are exactly the same as what the source has, you're quoting. You've got to put quotation marks around those words. If it's less than that, sometimes you've got a sentence that says something about self-esteem, and wow, I can't think of another word that this is a good synonym for self-esteem that won't change the meaning. Do I need to put quotes? I changed every other word, but do I need to put quotes around the word self-esteem? No, there are not many good synonyms for that. And if you try to force it, you may end up changing the meaning of the sentence. So, as a general rule, less than 4 words, okay to not put quotation marks, because there are certain words that can't be changed, and that's understood. At the same time, you want to be careful not to do thesaurus plagiarism, which is just lazy writing. By some people, not technically considered plagiarism. This is whenever you go through, and you take somebody else's words, and you give them credit for the ideas, but you go through and you change each word with a synonym, which most often will lead to a poorly constructed sentence that has ambiguous meaning, and that's why I recommend you stay away from doing that. Okay, so. If you're going to paraphrase, the information you need to include the author or authors' names and the year of publication. And then it's recommended that you include the page number, paragraph number, where you found that idea that you're citing, but it's not required, and most people aren't doing that yet in published works. We'll see the next couple of years if people start following APA's recommendation or not. One more quick thing on that. It's probably more strongly recommended if you're citing a really long document where it would be really hard to find the idea that you're citing. But if you're citing somebody's findings, so-and-so reported blah, blah, probably don't need the page number for that if it's not a quote, because most people know where to find the results. Look in the results section, right? But if it's some huge a book or something, yeah, probably a good idea to kind of give them a clue to where to look for the idea that you're getting at. Now, if it's a quotation that you've cited, so somebody's exact words, you need the author, the year, and then the page or paragraph number required. And you think page number versus paragraph number, which one do I use? If there are page numbers, you use that. You only use a paragraph number for non-paginated material, for stuff that doesn't have a page number, like some websites. If you're going to be citing something off the web, which be cautious about that, you cite the paragraph number, okay, or a brochure or some other thing like that. Okay, so if there's a page number, go with that. Okay, where does the information go? Well, we've got some choices, and you can vary up. I recommend you do vary your choices in writing anything, but generally it can either be part of the sentence, or it can be in parentheses at the end of the cited material, which is typically at the end of a sentence, but not necessarily, maybe at the end of a clause. Okay. So let's look at some examples to clarify what we mean by part of the sentence or at the end. So here's one with one author, because what it looks like looks a little different depending if you have one author, two authors, or more than two authors. So here we have one author, last name Benjamin, published in 2009. Benjamin found that men tend to have more difficulty dealing with rejection than women. And it's clearly not a quote because there's no quotation marks, no page number. So this is a paraphrase of Benjamin's findings. And Benjamin is part of this sentence, right? So the author is the subject of the sentence. The verb is found, so Benjamin found, and then here's the finding. And that's okay to do. That would be a paraphrase. Alternately, might look at it as if we had quoted the material. So the original, what Benjamin had actually written in his or her results section was that male participants reported experiencing higher levels of distress than female participants when faced with the prospect of being rejected. Okay. And so you can see now, okay, well, the sentence before, it's a fairly good paraphrase of what they found, but it's nowhere near word for word. So here we have word for word, it's a quote, so we got quotation marks around the parts that are quoted. We've got the page number, and notice there's not a period at the end of being rejected. The period goes at the end of the sentence. The only time you would have punctuation inside that quotation mark is if you had question mark. Let's see, and just kind of a side note, there's a tendency for people that are first writing about research to do stuff a lot like this. They say, you know, Benjamin conducted a study and found. If you want to avoid being wordy, you don't have to tell us that they conducted a study and found. You can tell us that they found something or that they reported something. We're going to assume that, of course, they conducted a study to find that. They didn't find it on the side of the road. And again, the exception to that being if there's something unique about the way they conducted the study and you want to talk about that, then you may do that. But generally, you can just say they found it, or just report the finding and cite them in parentheses at the end. Right? Okay. So, what it looks like at the end for a paraphrase, men tend to have more difficulty dealing with rejection than women. Benjamin. So instead of having to say Benjamin found, I can just say what Benjamin found, and then put the author's name at the end, and it's clear that this fact is based on somebody's finding, and the somebody is Benjamin in 2009. Right? If it were a quote, it would look like this. You know, the author of an earlier study found that blah blah blah, male participants reported blah blah blah. And then parentheses, Benjamin, the year, and the page number. So with the earlier one, which we can back up and look at real quick, we had Benjamin 2009, and then the page number was separate from the author and the year. Right? That's because the page number always goes at the end of the quoted material, regardless of where the author and the year are. Right? So page number always at the end of the quoted material. As soon as the quote ends, where there's a quotation mark, the next thing, nothing else should happen until there's a page number or paragraph number. So here we have it where, since the author isn't at the beginning, it gets to go at the end. So it's question marks, parentheses, and then we've got author, year, and page number all together, separated by commas. Okay. Another example is where we have a quotation, but then we have another source being cited in the same sentence. Right? So in contrast to blah blah, here's our quote: Benjamin, comma, Davis found that something else. So we have two different ways of citing something. So for the first clause, we've got the author inside the parentheses, and for the second clause, the author is outside the parentheses, and that's perfectly fine and mixes it up well. Okay, so pretty straightforward there. So for one author, it's fairly simple. A couple of choices, but pretty straightforward. Then if we look at when we have one author, we've talked so far, this has been assuming, I cited it. So what if you want to cite that author again? So subsequent citations. There's some little screwy rules they pay for this. So here we've got Benjamin 2009 found that blah blah, and I'm going to keep talking about Benjamin in the same paragraph. Right? Benjamin also noted, so here I don't have to have the year. Right? If you talk about the material from the same source, again in the same paragraph, you don't have to cite the year if you use the author's name as part of the sentence, right? In the first time you cite it. So if I say Benjamin 2009, then I can keep talking about Benjamin and not put the year. But it's kind of weird. If I had written instead, men tend to have more difficulty than women, and I put Benjamin in parentheses, then even though I keep talking about Benjamin, same paragraph, haven't talked about anything else, I still have to put the year again because the first time I used Benjamin, I didn't have it in parentheses. Okay, and anytime you have something in parentheses, it should have a year. Okay, but again, if in that first sentence you'd said Benjamin 2009 found blah blah blah, Benjamin 2009 also found, I'd be fine with that. You don't have to have the year again the second time because it's Benjamin's outside the parentheses in both cases. But if you put it, I wouldn't take off points. But if you think it flows better without putting the year the second time, fine to do that. Okay. But then again here, if we look at it, I've got Benjamin outside parentheses 2009. I talk about Davis, and I'm going to come back and talk about Benjamin again, even though Benjamin's outside parentheses. Since I talked about Davis, good idea to go ahead and put Benjamin's year again, just to be clear, because there was an intervening citation from the last time I cited Benjamin. Okay. So now if I'm looking at two authors, Benjamin Davis, 2009, found blah blah blah. Pretty simple here. The only things to look out for is make sure you use, if I've got them Benjamin and Davis outside of parentheses, the and is the word A and D and not an ampersand. Whereas if it's inside parentheses, as I have here with this quotation, Benjamin and Davis use an ampersand instead of the and. Okay, that's really the only thing to worry about with two authors versus one, and those rules about subsequent citations are the same. So if I said Benjamin Davis 2009 found blah blah, they also found, I don't have to put the year. I could say they or Benjamin Davis and keep talking about what they found or what they did. Now if we get into more than two authors, looking at 3, 4, 5 authors. The first time you cite the authors, you put all of them, and I can have them outside parentheses, so Benjamin, Davis, and Garcia. And again, I use the and not the ampersand. Or I could have put them in parentheses, so have whatever they found, whatever they reported, put it in parentheses. And if it's in parentheses, I do have the ampersand. And again, I always put the year. Now, where it gets a little different from two authors is when we look at subsequent citations. So the first time you cite all the authors, right? But if you cite it again anywhere else in the paper, same paragraph from paragraph, whatever, you abbreviate. Right? So here we have authors blah 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 found, Benjamin Davis and Garcia 09. Next sentence, and this could be in the same paragraph, could be in a later paragraph. Benjamin et al., which is Latin for and the rest, 2009 also found blah blah. And notice it's the et al. Isn't in parentheses here. It's out by the name. Et space al period space the year. If it had been at the end of a sentence, so if I had Benjamin Davis Garcia reported blah blah, and then I go on and I say they also reported da 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 da, parentheses, Benjamin et al. Et space al period comma space 2009. Okay, so always put the period after the al, whether or not it's inside parentheses or not. It's part of the abbreviation. Okay, so if you've got that clear, it's good, because now we'll change a little bit because there's an exception. So again, I said, and the subsequent thing's not. It's always first author et al. For subsequent citations. The thing is, if you've got a lot of authors, it can take up a lot of space to put all their names down. Even though you only do it that first time, AP says, well, we'll cut you some slack. And if you've got more than 5 authors, then the first time and subsequent times, you only cite the first author with the et al. Abbreviation. Right? So if the authors of the article were Benjamin Davis, Garcia, Lee, Cartier, and Smith, the first time I cited it, it would be Benjamin et al. And the subsequent times I cited it would still be Benjamin et al. But if it's 5, 4, or 3, you list all the authors, or two, or one. So 5 and less, you list them all. Once you get to 6, everybody gets screwed except for the first author in terms of citing it in the text. Their names will still show up in the reference page, most of them. But when you're citing in text, it's just the first one. Okay. So there's a lot of rules about what to cite. But I think if you look at table 6.1 in your APA manual, it does a really good job of in a small amount of space summarizing the rules for, okay, if you have this many authors, the first time it looks like this, subsequent times it looks like this. And then it even talks about one author, two authors, more than two, more than five, and then also talks about groups, like the American Psychiatric Association, if that's your author, how to cite that the first time and subsequent times. So be sure and look at that table for more examples and some more guidelines. And I'd probably put a little sticky tab on that page in your manual to go back to whenever you're citing. Okay. So we've talked so far about, okay, I've got a sentence or a phrase and there's one source. What if, I'm talking about some finding and multiple people found it, multiple people reported that finding as a fact? Well, then I want to give them all of them credit that I read, because it gives more weight to it. It's like, okay, it's not just one study that found it, it's been reported, 3, 4, 5 times. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and cite as many as I see. So if you do that, we have men tend to have more difficulty dealing with rejection than women. So Benjamin found it and Davis found it. How do you know which one to put first? I put Benjamin first, but Davis first. Is it the years, alphabetical? It's alphabetical. So you put them in alphabetical order and you separate them with semicolons. If there's 2, 3, 4, 5, however many, you separate them with a semicolon and a space. Okay. Okay. The other thing to look out for, secondary sources. So here, you read in Davis about something that Benjamin wrote. So Davis cited Benjamin, but you couldn't find the Benjamin article, or you're too lazy to find the Benjamin article, so you cite it as a secondary citation. If you do that, it looks like this, where you go, Benjamin 2009 contends that, blah, blah. And then at the end, parentheses, as cited in Davis 2010. Okay. And then what would go on your reference page is the Davis 2010. Right. But again, I don't recommend doing that. I recommend if you have something, if you read Davis and David talks about Benjamin, go find Benjamin's article, read it yourself, and then cite it as a primary citation instead of a secondary citation. Okay. And then other stuff that's a little wonky sometimes, websites, which as a general rule, say stay away from websites unless you really need them, or they're kind of government publications. But the information you need to include author and the year, right, for most citations, including website if it's there. Often on websites there's not an author, so if there's no author, not even a group, like it's not the website wasn't published by the American Psychiatric Association, it's just some random webpage. Use the first few words of the title of the article that you found online in quotes. Maybe the article was something called "How People Face Rejection." So "How People Face" would become the author, and it would go in quotes, and you would treat it like the author's name in your citations, and then also in the reference page. And then if there's no year, and usually it's at the bottom page, it'll say revised, 2004. If there's not a year, then you use the abbreviation N period D period, no space between, for no date, right? So maybe there was an author but no year. So Benjamin wrote this article online. There was no date of publication, so Benjamin, comma, ND. Okay. Other stuff to read about. I can't go over everything because there's a lot of little details in minutia, but stuff to look at as it comes up. If you find a source and you go, oh, this doesn't cover the basics that we talked about. If you have multiple works by the same author, so if Benjamin wrote several things, and one of them's from 2009, others from 2005, or there's 2 things that he or she wrote in 2009, well, how do I tell them apart? The manual will tell you that. Okay. What if there's a group as the author, like the APA? Which, side note here, the DSM-4 TR and all the DSMs written by the APA, that's not the American Psychological Association. That's the American Psychiatric Association, and there's a big difference there. So make sure you're using that appropriately. But it'll tell you how to cite if the author wasn't a person but it was some group or organization. If you're quoting and you alter the quoted material, you cut out some words because they were non-essential, or you changed a word to make it fit. You changed the tense of a verb maybe to make it fit in your sentence. The manual will tell you how to do that, what to make it look like to show that you've altered it. If there are citations within quoted material, so you're quoting something that quoted something else, it tells you how to do that. If you're citing classical works, the Bible or the Torah or the Quran, anything like that, it tells you how to deal with those things as well. So there's lots of information in the manual, and you don't need to memorize it all. You just need to know to look for it, and that it is there as a reference. So now let's move on to talking about constructing the reference page. A couple just kind of bullet point ideas. The title is centered in bold, and the title is references. Okay. In terms of spacing, you double space everything. So you just, if you're using Word, some word processing software, you set it to the default of double space, and then you don't add another space between stuff. Okay. So every line is double spaced, and there's no triple spacing, quadruple spacing, no single spacing. It's all double spaced. You don't have to hit return extra times or anything like that. Just set a double space and type away. Okay. The citations are put in order alphabetical by the last name of the author, of the first author. Only list what you cited. So if you read something but didn't cite it in your text, it doesn't go in the reference page. Your reference page and your and things cited in text should match perfectly. There should be nothing in your reference page that wasn't cited, and nothing cited that's not in your reference page. Make sure those match. A hanging indent for each citation. So the first part is flush left, and then when you if it wraps around to the next line, it should be indented in. And again, you want to do that with your word processing software to set up a hanging indent rather than trying to space it just right, because you'll end up changing stuff and getting it all wonky. So learn how to use the settings on your word processing software. It will help you immensely. If you have more than one source from the same author or authors, the oldest one goes first, right? 'Cause obviously alphabetical, that's the same word, same alphabetical order, but so then it goes to year. And then the order of the author's names within a citation. If you read an article and there's all these authors' names and it's not clear who the first author is, and usually it's the one top left, and then it goes. Usually it reads left to right if they're all on the same line, or if they're in kind of columns, you go down the first column and then down the second column, and first being on the left, second being on the right. If you're not sure about the order of the author's names to put when you're citing them or putting in your reference page, look and see how somebody else cited it, and that can help you be sure that you got the author's names in the right order. Okay, we'll look at just a few of the examples of 3 examples of things you'll most commonly cite. And the most common thing you'll cite is a journal article, at least, hopefully. So here's one, Fiala, Hutka, and Bookert. Right? And the title of the article, Teaching Students How to Create a Kick-Ass Reference Page, published in the American Journal of Kick-Ass Stuff. So a couple things. Authors' names are, you put the last name and 2 initials, if they have 2 initials, and usually they do. No first names. Don't put first names when talking about the authors of a journal article. Okay. There is a space after the initial of the first name. So if we look at Fiala, comma S period, it's S period space E period, which is different from certain initialisms. Like if you had the trying to think of a good one. I can't think of any examples, but if you had something that was an abbreviation, an initialism, sorry, that had periods, there wouldn't be spaces in them. But for people's names, once their initials, there is a space there. Minor thing. The year that's there is the year of publication, not the year when you read it or accessed it. The title of the article, not capitalized other than the first letter. It's the only thing that's capitalized in it, which is a little different for some people, different from some other styles. Unless, again, there's a colon, like if it was some introductory clause in the title and then something else. Like new ideas for teaching students, colon, how to create a kick-ass reference page. Then the first word after the colon would be capitalized as well. Other than that, You don't capitalize stuff. Period at the end of the title, and then we see the journal name, and the journal is capitalized. At least all the major words, and obviously of isn't capitalized, but all the major words are capitalized. And then after that comes the volume number, and this is another minor thing, but the volume number is also italicized. But if there's an issue number, the issue number is not italicized. It's silly, but them's the rules. So you capitalize the journal name, you italicize the volume number. There may or may not be an issue number. If there is, you put it there, and it's once upon a time it was put inside parentheses. Now it's just separated from with commas from the volume number. So this is volume 8, issue 2, comma, and then the pages that the article appeared on, 342 to 367. You don't put P period or PP period, just the page numbers, right? And then a period. And then you're done with most of the citation. But then we have this fairly new thing, the digital object identifier, the DOI, which most journal articles will have one. And if they do have one, you have to list it. And usually you'll copy and paste it from the website where you found the article, PsycInfo, or whatever EBSCOhost search engine you're using, because you might make an error if you're trying to type the stuff. But you want to put it exactly as it appears, and as it shows up on this PowerPoint, it looks like there's a space in there after that one slash, but there's not. That's just weird spacing that PowerPoint's doing. You put it in exactly as it appears, which is usually, no, it's always with no spaces. What else? If that DOI is really long and it's near the end of a line, where your wrap text function on Word will make it go to the whole thing, go to the next line, you can put a space in so that it wraps, so the whole thing doesn't go down. But you put that space in after some punctuation mark. So if this thing were scooted over where the DOI 10.1068 was near the end of the margin, and it would then cause the whole thing to go down the next line, I could put a space in after that the slash to break it in order for it not to pull the whole thing down to the next line. Minor thing. So journal articles, pretty straightforward. A book chapter in an edited book, which a lot of the book chapters you would cite would be in edited books. So we put the authors of the chapter, not of the book, not the editors at the beginning, but of the chapter that we're citing, and that's who you would cite in your paper too, which again, whatever is appearing at the left side of your citation in your reference page, that's what should be the author or authors that are cited in your text as well. So here's a chapter written by Hutke and Bookert. We got their initials just like a journal article, no big deal. One minor thing, there's two of them, and here the two of them are separated by an ampersand instead of the A&D, which is a little weird, but that's the reference page. And the other thing is, there's a comma after Hutke KM before the ampersand, and usually we only have a comma before an ampersand if we have three or more things, if we have a series. Not so with the reference page. Even if it's just two, there's a comma and a space before that ampersand. I don't know. Your publication period, and then the title of the chapter, which is again kind of like the title of a journal article. Capitalize the first letter, and that's it. And then after that is a period, and then the word in, then the editor's names. And here, APA likes to change things, right? So now, instead of having the last name and initials, it's the first initial of the first name, not the middle name, just first initial, and then the last name, and then parentheses, an abbreviation for editor. Okay. If there were more than one editor, then you would list both of them, and then the abbreviation would be EDS instead of ED. Okay. After the parentheses, comma, and then the title of the book, which is italicized, but again, kind of weird. Although titles of journals are capitalized, titles of books not capitalized. Go figure. So title of the book, and then the pages on which that chapter appeared, which now we're going to put parentheses, and we are going to put PP for pages. If it were one page, it would just be P, period, whatever the pages are, period, and then information about where it was published. So this is Arlington, Virginia, United States, and then colon, and then the publisher, which was the American Psychiatric Publishing, or it could be Riverside Publishing, whatever the publisher name was. And then after that, if it had a DOI, we would put the DOI. A lot of times, book chapters won't have DOIs. I don't know why. If it doesn't have a DOI, then you put where you retrieved that from. When you were looking for stuff, you're probably using a search engine, so you put that. If you weren't, if you just had this book on your shelf, you don't have to put retrieved from. If you did find it somewhere, you have to put retrieved from. And if you're using most of the stuff on our campus, PsycInfo, Academic Search Complete, whatever, those are all subdomains of EBSCOhost, so it would be retrieved from EBSCOhost. Okay. Oh, and one other thing, a lot of times students will put the date, retrieved on this date. If it's a published article or chapter, you don't need the date. That's usually just for websites that might change. Okay. So for example from websites, which again, I'd say try to stay from websites unless they're for like government reports. So I'll give you an example of how to cite a governmental report. So U.S. Department of Health and Human Services from the NIH, revised in 2008, and the title of the report was Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD. So the author here, there's not a person, right? So it's the organization instead, and this is who you'll cite in the paper. And you probably, the first time you cite it, you'd put the whole thing, and then you would abbreviate it, and you could use that abbreviation as the author's name after that. The year it was updated, the title of the thing, and then if it has a publication number, which all NIH documents will have a publication number, you put that in. And then where you got it from, so retrieved from, and the website. And again here, this website, notice how it wraps from line to line, and I had to put spaces into that. If I didn't do that, it would, after the from, there would be nothing else on that line. It would drop the whole thing down to the next line, and then it would break it somewhere else. So to keep it from doing that, I put in a space after the slash after gov, right? And then again another one after the slash after disorder, I put a space in there as well to get it to break appropriately. Okay, so again, those are just a few examples of common things, but you may have other stuff that you come across as well, and that's what the manual is for. So use the manual as a resource. Don't try to memorize all these things. You need to have a good idea of stuff you'll see commonly, right? That way it's easier not to make a lot of mistakes. So journal articles, book chapters, get to know those fairly well. But still, go back and double check yourself against the manual. Don't trust some website to cite correctly for you. Right? I know a lot of the EBSCO sites give you the option where you can click on Cite, and it'll give you APA, MLA, AMA, all different kinds of citations, and you ought to just use that, and I'll copy and paste to make sure it's okay. If you want to use that as a starting point, so you don't have to type as much, fine, but go back and make sure that it's cited appropriately, because they might make errors when entering that information into the database. And then the other thing is, depending on when the article was published, it may not be cited in accordance with the most current manual, which you will be judged by. And then I think there's a Purdue site, and there's a couple sites that will cite stuff for you. Use them to help you, but don't trust them. You still are responsible, and you can't. There's no excuse to say, "Oh well, somebody else cited like that. I thought that was the way." No. If the information is there in the article and you didn't put it in correctly, you spelled the name wrong, you didn't put the page number right, whatever, that's on you. Okay. And again, it's because we don't want to repeat other people's mistakes and kind of perpetuate a mistake. So you are responsible for your own writing. Last thing, just to be sure of, make sure the reference page and the in-text citations match. Again, like I said before, I'll say it one more time because it is important. Everything in the reference page should be something that was cited. Everything that you cite in the text should be in the reference page, and no discrepancies between the two. Okay, both in the stuff is there and that it's cited the same way. So if you said Benjamin and Davis in text, then it should be Benjamin Davis in the reference page and not just Benjamin by herself or himself. Okay. Okay, that's all for now. Take care.